Hi guys, so today's video is going to be my April book haul. This was a major book shopping month for me. I had several book dates with my husband and he basically just lets me run wild in Barnes & Nobles for a couple hours buying books. And I also made a couple orders from Book Outlet and one or two from Amazon. All of these books have been previously hauled on my Instagram account, so they've appeared on my Tumblr page as well. But this is the first time that they're all being put together on video as my massive April book haul. So I thought long and hard about the best way of separating this book haul so it would make sense, and the best thing that I could come up with was books that I have already read, whether it's I read the physical copies that I bought from the beginning of the month, or I had previously read them on my Nook. So that's how I'm going to be doing it. We're going to do the read first and then the TBRs second. So hopefully it's not too convoluted and confusing for you guys. First, we're going to start off with the books that I've already read. And I kind of have some of the children's books separated just because. So we're going to start with Neil Gaiman's Fortunately the Milk. I actually bought this book for one of my friend's kids for Christmas, and I had read it on the Nook prior to buying it for him just to make sure that it was age appropriate. And I absolutely adored the book. So he got it, loved it, and then I decided, you know what, I want my own copy for my bookshelf. It is a great Neil Gaiman story. It's perfect for kids who have a great imagination. It's a really cute story. Next, I bought the Pride and Prejudice Counting and Anna Karenina Fashion Primer. I have had my eyes on these books forever, but I had never physically seen them in a bookstore, and I went to Barnes & Noble the other day and they had it and I could not resist. They are adorable. These are two of my favorite classic books and I had to have them even though I don't have kids. Next, I bought Oddfellows Orphanage. I actually read this book quite a while ago. I reviewed it when it first came out, but I read it off of NetGalley. So I had never actually had the book in my hand and been able to see the illustrations that Emily Winfield Martin does. And I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but they're very whimsical and really cute. And she is an artist that I absolutely love. I actually have some of her pieces that I've bought online from Etsy up in my house. So this is it's a story about a very eccentric orphanage and the kids and adults that live inside of it. And it's really, really cute. I think all children and most adults would really enjoy this. Another children's book I got this month was The Library. It's based on a true story about a woman who just loved reading so much and had so many of her own books that she ended up donating them all to the city to open a special library. It is adorable. If you are a reader, you will absolutely love her story. This woman's life is my dream come true. Probably won't happen to me, but I love that I could live vicariously through her for a little bit. Next, we have The Giver by Lois Lowry. I never read this book in school. For many years kind of judged books by their cover, and this was just one of those books that I was like, I have no interest in reading that. But recently I decided to give it a shot and I absolutely fell in love with this book. It was very difficult for me to put it down. If I would have had my choice, I would have been reading it while I was at work, and I wanted to read it before the movie came out. Basically, the story is based on a society that's utopian, and it's the story of one child and his placement in that society. It is really such a great story. I haven't continued on reading the series. I'm not sure if I'm going to continue on reading the series because I feel like I treasure this book so much now that I don't want it to be ruined for me. Next is To Kill a Mockingbird. This is one of my all-time favorite books, which appears in my first video. Yeah, I think everybody pretty much knows about To Kill a Mockingbird. Atticus Finch is one of the best characters ever written, so go read it if you haven't. The most recent books that I've actually read, and these are the Tiny Book of Tiny Stories. These are put out by Hit Record, which is Joseph Gordon-Levitt's basically artist community where he has musicians and artists and writers and just filmmakers all come together and collaborate. And this is one of the projects that came out of that entire endeavor. And this is a 3-volume series, and it is literally tiny stories have been illustrated by someone. They are all wonderful. None of the stories are actually written to be read together. They're just all individual little snippets of stories that have been illustrated, and it is really a great little read. Next, we have 2 modern adaptations of Jane Eyre. I have read both of these books on my Nook a while back, and I liked them both. I actually liked The Flight of Emma Hardy a lot lot more than I liked Jane, but I am a huge Jane Eyre fan, so I decided that I wanted them both on my bookshelf. I want to say that this one, The Flight of Hemel Hardie by Margot Livesey, either or, I guess, my bad, is less dark than this one. But I mean, if you like Jane Eyre, I'm sure you'll really enjoy either one of them. Next we have Alienated by Melissa Landers. This was a book that I was very skeptical about. It seemed to remind me a lot of this show Starcrossed, which is on the CW right now, when I first picked it up. But as the story went on, I was pleasantly surprised. It's basically about a girl who is chosen to be the ambassador for the United States for a foreign exchange student from another planet. And I absolutely loved this book. It did take me about 60 pages to get over the fact that it did have a few similarities to the show, but I really liked it. I'm so excited for the sequel that's coming out, and I am obsessed with this cover. I'm not sure how well you can see it, but it is just stunning. I've actually created like a feature spot on my bookshelf for it. Next, I have Of Trident and Of Poseidon. These are the first two books in the Of Poseidon series, and they are from Anna Banks. I read both of these on my Nook as well quite a while ago. It was in a phase that I was super into mermaid books, so I probably read 3 different mermaid series simultaneously, and this was absolutely my favorite of all the series. The final book of Neptune, I believe, has already come out. Haven't gotten it yet, but I'm really excited to read it. And it's just basically about a girl who finds out that she is a mermaid and has to choose to live that life or not live that life. And it's wonderful. I really enjoyed it. Next, I have the Shatter Me series by Tahereh Mafi. I only physically own Ignite Me and the 2 novella bound up Unite Me because I read Shatter Me and Unravel Me on my Nook, and I really refuse to buy current Shatter Me cover till it's transformed hardback into this beautiful eye cover that matches the other ones. This was probably the most surprising read for me this month. I completely inhaled the series in a very, I think it was a day and a half is how fast I read all of the books. I'm not about to give a synopsis now because I feel like everybody on BookTube has already read it or knows enough about it that they know whether or not they want to read it. These were wonderful. Another set of books that I bought was Everneath and Everbound by Brodi Ashton. I love them, and I am completely obsessed with these covers. The third book, which I can't remember the name right now, is already out. I want to get it and read it as well and match it up with these gorgeous books on my bookshelf. Both of these books are actually autographed, and this is basically a retelling of the underworld mythology, sort of. I don't want to say too much and give it away because it is not exactly the Hades mythology or the Persephone mythology. It's just kind of that twisted. But it's really, I love underworld stories, and this was really a good one. Next we have The Selection. The Selection was kind of one of those impulse buys of mine, and then honestly, I thought it was kind of different. I thought it was going to be The Hunger Games meets The Bachelor. This was just a lot more The Bachelor. That being said, I still really enjoyed it. I ended up reading this one. I read The Selection. I read both of the novellas that came with it. And then I read the follow-up, The Elite, I believe. And I've already pre-ordered the one, which is the final book in this series. I was a little annoyed at the ending of the last one, but hopefully it's fixed in the next one. But again, this is basically The Bachelor in a dystopian world. Love and Leftovers by Sarah Tregea is actually a book that I read a few months ago and fell in love with. And it's really, I guess I didn't expect it to be as sweet or as charming as it is. But it's basically the story of a girl named Marcy whose family is going through a bit of a rough patch. So she is plucked out of her home and her town, and she moves somewhere else with her mother to take some time to recuperate and go through everything and fix everything that's going on in their lives. In doing so, she leaves her best friends, the leftovers, behind and basically has to start fresh in this town. I didn't expect to love this book, and I really did love this book. I feel like it is a great read for anybody who feels a little bit out of place in the world that they live. It's just very charming and very sweet. The next book is Rainbow Rowell's Attachment. I originally read this book on my Nook, and it took me about 2 or 3 tries to really get into the story. So I would read about 20 pages, then stop and have to restart all over again. But the third time was absolutely the charm. I fell in love with it. It is an adult novel. There's not really a lot of explicit stuff in the story, so I do think it's appropriate for teens, but it's basically about 2 best friends who are constantly breaking company policy and writing personal emails to each other, and the guy whose job it is to monitor those emails. It is set in Y2K when that was a big deal, so it's, you know, a bit of a time jump backwards. But the story is really charming, and you really fall in love with the 2 girls and, of course, the main guy. So if you love Rainbow Rowell, I am positive that you will love this as well. Next, we have Easy by Tamara Weber. This is a new adult book. Last year, I was going through a pretty massive new adult binge phase, and this is one of the books that I picked up in that phase of my life. This is one of the few new adult books that really stood out to me. I really loved the way that they dealt with the tough issues in the story. I don't know how much of the story I want to give away. I mean, it is new adult, so it is a little bit it is a little risque, but it has some pretty serious issues going on from the very beginning of the story. So it tackles a lot of hard topics. So that's something to consider. You know, overall, I really enjoyed this book. I love the characters in it, and I thought that it was dealt with in a very positive way. Next is The Coldest Girl in Cold Town by Holly Black. I actually just talked about this book in my most surprising reads video. This is a vampire novel that's set in a sort of post-apocalyptic world. Not really post-apocalyptic in the sense of like there's no electricity and things have just like gone to hell in a handbasket, but post-apocalyptic in the sense that it is nothing like the world that we currently live in. The vampires have actually come out into society, so people know that they exist, and they are, for the most part, put into these contained areas known as cold towns. And it's the story of the main girl, Tana, her basically trek there to the cold town and what it's like inside. It has its own feel to it, and it's kind of dark and a little sinister. I would highly recommend this book. Next, we have The Statistical Probability of Love at First Sight by Jennifer E. Smith. This is such a charming little story, and it basically takes place all in the course of 24 hours, and it's the story of a girl and a guy who meet in the airplane and how they really connected on that flight and how their life has intersected. It's really a charming little contemporary love story. And I remember finishing the story with a giant smile on my face and immediately wanting to read something else by this author. So I highly recommend this. Next, we have The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. I know that I already talked about this in my most surprising reads, so I'm not going to get super into it, but basically this is my second adult Neil Gaiman book that I read, and I did not love it. Next, we have My Life Next Door by Huntley Fitzpatrick. This is the story of Samantha Reed and her next door neighbors, the Garretts. It is such a sweet story. It's all about falling in love with the boy next door. It is heartwarming, and you kind of want to become part of the Garrett family when you read it. So if you like contemporary, I highly recommend that you pick up My Life Next Door. Next, we have, I did not read this book in school, but my husband did, and it was one of his, if not his favorite book. All through his teen years, this story is just so beautiful. Next is Will Grayson. Will Grayson. This was also in my most surprising reads of 2014. This is the type of book that I never thought I would love, but I absolutely did. I laughed out loud. It was very sweet. It was very touching. And it's just the story of these 2 boys named Will Grayson who don't know each other exist and run into each other on the streets one day, and how their lives kind of intersect. It's a very good book. I highly recommend it. Lastly, for the haul books that I've already read, is The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. I actually bought this book and the second book in the series based on a recommendation from another booktuber, and I absolutely loved it. This book is the story of Belly and her family going to the summer home that they've gone to every year since she was a little girl Summer home belongs to her mother's best friend, and while there, they always spend their summers with her and her two boys. This is the summer that she is different from all the other summers, and how her life changes. I kind of want to wait to reward myself, to be honest with you. Now we're going to get into the portion of my April haul of books that I have not read yet, and in other cases, I'm going to do the best and tell you everything that I know. So first we have The Waking Engine by David Edison. This is actually just the dust jacket because this is a book that my husband is currently reading it right now. It is a sci-fi adult novel. I don't know much about it, but I can tell you that the blurb on the front cover says, "Welcome to the city unspoken, where gods and mortals come to die." That sounds amazing. Also, this is a stunningly beautiful cover. I don't know if you can see it. It's beautiful. Next, we have Every Day by David Levithan. I actually already have this book on my Nook, but I find that I always try to read it right before I go to bed and end up passing out and then don't remember anything when I go to pick it up again. So I thought that it would be much better for me and it would probably motivate me to read it more if I had a physical copy of the book. I read The Lover's Dictionary last year and it was just stunningly beautiful. I recommend that book to absolutely everybody. So I feel between that and reading Will Grayson, I have to give this a real shot. Next, I have The Sea of Monsters, which is the second book in the Percy Jackson series. I read the first book a couple years ago. I really, really loved it. But for some reason, I don't know, I never felt like I was ready to read the next one. And recently, one of my friend's kids asked to borrow my Percy Jackson book. And when he kind of said that, it motivated me to get the next one so that I could, you know, keep reading them and have discussions with him about them. Next, we have The Girl of Nightmares by Kendare Blake. This is the second book in the Anna Dressed in Blood series. I have Anna Dressed in Blood on my Nook. I have not read it yet because I am a giant chicken shit, but I absolutely fell in love with this cover and I don't even know what to tell you. I just had to have the book. I know that I want to read Anna Dressed in Blood and I want to get the hardback version to put on my shelf. But this was it was mesmerizing. And it is kind of a little bit creepy. Even the spine is creepy. But next is To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. I have been wanting to read this book forever. I don't know when was the first time I found out about it, but I've been dying to read it. And I went to Barnes & Noble's thinking that it had already come out, and I looked up and down the shelves for it forever and basically had a childish hissy fit in the middle of the aisle when I couldn't find it, not understanding how it could possibly be that Barnes & Noble's did not have this book. And then I realized that it came out the next week. So I immediately went to Target and bought it because I'm still holding some sort of weird grudge on Barnes & Noble's for not having the book a week early. This is a girl who writes letters to all the boys she's loved before, and the letters get mailed out somehow, and it's kind of about that. I absolutely loved the other Jenny Han book I read, The Summer I Turned Pretty, so I haven't a doubt in my mind that I'm going to love this as well. The next book I have is the follow-up to The Summer I Turned Pretty, It's Not Summer Without You, also by Jenny Han, and yeah, this is just a continuing story of Belly. The next two books I have are book 1 and 2 in the Under the Wildwood series. This is written by one of the guys in a band that I absolutely love, who for some reason I cannot remember the name, but it's supposed to be very whimsical and just kind of, I don't know, just kind of like fun, and it's an adventure story, and I've heard mixed reviews. I've heard that people are absolutely enchanted by it, and I've heard other people say that the books could be half as long because they are kind of long. They're like middle grade books. I am really excited to read it because these books have been on my radar for a really long time. I know that there are going to be, I know that the third one's out, and I think that there's going to be 1 or 2 more in the series. Hopefully I get to these soon. Next I have book 1 and 2 in the Grishna, maybe? Yeah, I'm going to go with Grishna. Grishna series. I have Shadow and Bone and Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo. I've heard nothing but wonderful things about these books. I was able to get them both on Book Outlet, so they were really a steal because otherwise I probably would have just gotten them on my Nook. I cannot wait to read these books. I know that the third book is coming out soon if it hasn't already come out. So yeah. The next two books I have are Cinder and Cress, which are book 1 and 3 in the Lunar Chronicles series. I am missing book 2, which should be Where My Face Is right now, but I can only find Scarlet in paperback, and no, they have to match to be on my bookshelf. So I am going to read book 1, which is a retelling of Cinderella. Then I'm going to scour the internet for book 2, which is a retelling of Red Riding Hood, I believe. And then I am going to pick up book 3, which is a retelling of Rapunzel. I'm really excited to read this. Recently, one of my friends read it and was raving about it and said that I absolutely had to pick it up. So, yay. Next, we have A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. This is honestly not the kind of book that I would typically read, but there was something about it that just kind of called to me. I was really intrigued, and then when I actually saw it in the bookstore and I picked it up and I opened it and I saw that it had kind of like illustrations in it, sold. Done. That was all I needed. So hopefully I'll get to this soon. I don't really know much about it, but that doesn't really matter. It's good to be surprised. Next we have The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. I am quite sure it's going to make me cry. I am a very soft touch, so it doesn't take much. And honestly, watching the trailer of the movie made me cry. But that being said, I'm still super excited to read this. I've heard amazing things about it. Everybody on BookTube raves about it. People in my daily life rave about it. I just have to man up and decide to sit down for a cry fest and read it. Next we have Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea. I hadn't really heard much about this, and then I saw it in the bookstore and was mesmerized by its beauty. It seemed like an interesting cover, and I buy a lot of things just because I am very excited to read this and see what it's all about. I kind of hope it's not incredibly scary because I don't like scary books, but if it's too scary for me, maybe I'll make it a giveaway. Yeah. I have The Rhythmatist by Brandon Sanderson. I wanted to start reading a lot more fantasy and children's fantasy because I feel like after kind of Harry Potter ended, I just haven't read a lot of that. And I know that Brandon Sanderson also writes an adult fantasy, which I actually have another one of his books to haul now. It has something to do with people who write in chalk, and those chalk illustrations come to life. And that is just incredibly awesome. So I had to get it. Next we have Paper Towns by John Green, which still has the Target sticker on it. Ignore, please. This was purchased after I read Will Grayson, Will Grayson. I've been kind of anti-John Green when it comes to his books. I love his Vlogbrothers videos and his Crash Course stuff and the rest of the stuff he does, but I just wasn't a huge fan until I read Tifios last year and fell in love, and then I've decided little by little to incorporate some of his other books and give Paper Towns a go. I'll let you know. Next we have For Darkness Shows the Stars by Diana Peterfrund. Okay, hope I said that right. My understanding of this story is that it is a retelling of Jane Austen's Persuasion sci-fi style. That is very exciting to me. I've heard that this book has some pretty decent reviews, and I know that there's going to be a couple other books in this. I think it's a series. Really excited to read this, actually. Persuasion, to me, is a wonderful story that never gets as much hype as it should because it always gets basically overshadowed by Pride and Prejudice and Emma and Sense and Sensibility. I absolutely love reading modernized retelling of Jane Austen books. I have an entire shelf dedicated to spin-off books of Jane Austen or retelling of Jane Austen stories, so I'm really excited to get into this. Next we have The Evolution of Calpurnia Tate. All I know about this is that it is a historical fiction novel that won the Newbery honor. Woo, Newbery. I've heard really good things about this book. The cover is just beautiful. Every time I would see it, my eye would be drawn to this beautiful cover. I've heard that it is really a wonderful book, so hopefully I love it. Next we have Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. This is shameful, but I placed this order from Amazon UK because I did not want the American cover. I wanted this beautiful one. I've heard really good things about this series, pretty much all over BookTube, and I'm really excited to read it. Actually, I want to make this part of my May TBR so I could get into this series right away. Next, we have the other Brandon Sanderson book on my haul, which is the first book in the Mistborn series, and it is The Final Empire. This was also purchased from Amazon UK because I could not find a cover that I didn't absolutely detest. And as much as I feel like I have to love the book itself, I equally feel like I have to want the cover in order to spend money on it and have it on my shelf, because if not, I'm just perfectly happy having it on my Nook. I read on my e-reader about as much as I read physical books, but I will only physically buy books that I love visually and story-wise. I've heard great things about this, and I feel like lately everywhere on BookTube people are talking about Brandon Sanderson. So I'm really excited to get into this series as well as read The Rhythmatist, and maybe I'll branch off into other stories of his. Next we have Cruel Beauty, which is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. Beauty and the Beast is one of those stories that I really love, and I actually have about another 3 retellings of Beauty and the Beast on my bookshelf. So when I found out that that's what this book was about, I was really excited. I have a feeling that it's going to be a little darker. The blurb says her mission was to kill him, her destiny was to love him. So we'll see. Next we have Destiny Rewritten by Catherine Fitzmaurice. This picture is actually the wallpaper on my phone. I don't really know much about this. I think I read a synopsis a while back and thought it would be a great story. So I had it on my wish list, and I want to say I found this on Book Outlet pretty cheaply. And that's why I finally jumped for it and bought it. Next is Warm Bodies by Isaac Marion. I'm not a huge zombie fan. I don't watch The Walking Dead. It's disgusting, I find. I am very skeptical when somebody recommends something with zombies. Then I watched the movie, and I realized that it was really more of a retelling of Romeo and Juliet than anything else. And that the movie was okay, but I felt like I would really enjoy reading the book. They had it on Book Outlet. I think this is the movie cover of it, but we'll see. Hopefully I will enjoy it. Next we have Lev Grossman's The Magicians. I've had this book on my Nook for a really long time, and the other day when we went to Barnes & Noble's, my husband was dying to buy something that he could read, and despite the fact that I told him that I already had a copy of it, he wanted to get the physical book, which is fine by me because it'll look lovely on my shelves. I know that this is supposed to be a more adult, and there's more than one book in the series. People really love it, so I'm really excited to get into this at some point. It's not super high on my TBR, to be honest, but I now have it so that I can move it up, hopefully. Next we have Rebel Belle by Rachel Hawkins. I am absolutely in love with this cover. I'm obsessed with it. I just can't get enough of it. And I heard a review that said this book was like Veronica Mars meets Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Sold, people. That's all I need to hear. So hopefully I will get to read this in May and let you guys know what I think. Next we have The Fiery Heart by Richelle Mead. This is the, I want to say fourth book in the Bloodlines series, which is actually the spin-off series for Vampire Academy. Wow, Cindy looks super creepy looking back at me from this computer screen. I really enjoyed the Vampire Academy, and when I started reading Bloodlines, I was a bit skeptical because I did not love Sydney, but I absolutely adore Adrian, and he has sold me, and I feel like Richelle Mead has really done a lot of character development when it came to Sydney, and I'm on book 4 and I absolutely love it. You liked Vampire Academy, and even if you're a little skeptical about reading Bloodlines, pick it up. I know that the next book is coming out because I've already pre-ordered that in hardcover. So I really need to read this before the next book comes out in the next, I want to say, couple months. Next we have The Nethergrim by Matthew Tobin. As I said, I want to get into a bit more children's fantasy. After I read Harry Potter, I've been kind of like about children's fantasy, so I wanted to get a bit more into it, so this seemed like a great place. The blurb says, when magic sleeps, darkness awakens. Let's do this. We have Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. This was supposed to be one of my books that I read this month, and I just could not bring myself to read it. I've actually been wanting to read this book for a really long time. The cover is stunning. It's won so many awards. I don't know what came over me when it came time to pick up this book that I just decided, screw it, I don't want to read it this month. So it's getting pushed to May. Next, we have Born at Midnight by C.C. Hunter. I believe this is the first book in the Shadow Falls series. This is one of those books that has been kind of floating in my radar for a while, and I'm always on the fence whether or not I should read it. I'm hoping it's not going to be Twilighty. I'm hoping it's going to be a little bit more mature than that, I guess you can say. But I was willing to buy the first book and give it a shot, so we will see. Next, we have Sass and Serendipity by Jennifer Ziegler. This is a retelling of Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. And as I said, I am a sucker for Austen retellings. As a matter of fact, this year I think I've already read 2 Austen retellings. I'm looking forward to reading this. I love to see how they modernize and twist the original stories. So hopefully it's good. And to last, I have The Invention of Hugo Cabret. And this book was super scary when I first picked it up and incredibly heavy. Upon further inspection, well, first of all, let's just look at the stunningness that is this cover. It is just so beautiful. But when I actually opened the book in the bookstore, I noticed that it is like insanely illustrated. So the amount of writing is, I would say maybe half of the book is writing and the other half is story. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. I love the pencil drawings. I know that there's a movie that came out by Martin Scorsese, I believe, a couple years ago. I wasn't super interested in it. And then when I started watching videos on BookTube, I heard a lot of people really talk about how wonderful this book was. So I decided to give it a shot. So hopefully I will love this. I think this is going to be a big win for me. Lastly, we have Love Letters to the Dead by Ava DeLaria. I'm actually a little bit more than halfway through this book. I've been reading this pretty much since the day I bought it, which I would say was like a couple weeks ago. I'm really enjoying it, but I'm not inhaling it the way I tend to do with other contemporary books. So I guess that was a little disappointing for me, but overall it is a great story. When I do read it, I find myself reading several letters, I guess. And basically the premise is just this girl who's given a task, given an assignment in class to write a letter to a dead person. And her first letter is to Kurt Cobain. She writes to Janis Joplin. She writes to Amy Winehouse. She writes to River Phoenix, to E.E. Cummings, John Keats. It's the way that the story is told, which if I'm not mistaken is commonly referred to as an epistolary, maybe? I find that I really enjoy the way that the author, Ava DeLaria, connects the person that the letter is being written to what's going on in the main character's life, whose name I cannot remember. So guys, that was it. That was my insane book haul. If you actually sat through it all, thank you so much. I can only hope, I should say, that I will never have another book haul this big, but at the same time, I kind of hope that I do because it's super fun to buy books all the time. Bye!